Bron, you're just counting your bank accounts. How many bank accounts do you have?
Well, with the businesses, 21.
21 bank accounts. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Top 1%er podcast, where we talk about more than wealth creation, but we actually talk about living a fulfilled and meaningful life and increasing our quality of life by focusing on living an intentional life and personal development. So we're going to talk about today why Bron has 21 bank accounts. Really, I want you to pay attention and listen up, because we're going to talk a lot about finance, basic finance.
Yeah.
Finance 101. We're going to talk about bank accounts. We're going to talk about credit cards and debit cards and which one you should or shouldn't be using. We're going to talk about how to organize and structure your money and have a productive conversation with your spouse. Husband and wives need to talk about budgets. They need to talk about money and financial goals and those kind of things. But let's just get right into the basics of finance, and we'll build up to why you have 21 different bank accounts. Okay. Go back to when you were a newlywed, no kids, learning how to increase your professional income. And, did you and your wife right off the bat combine bank accounts? Do you have separate bank accounts? Like, let's just start with the basics of marriage 101, finance 101.
That's a sensitive subject, really, because I feel like I do things differently than a lot of the people I know. We've always set it up. My wife and I we have one account, and all income flows into that one account. Early stages, the income was through me, and now it's through my wife and myself, but it's all goes into one, and then we budget from there. A lot of people do separate bank accounts, and they have, spouses' income come in one, the other spouse the other, and they pay for things out of those accounts. One's responsible for this, one's responsible for this. And there's a lot of reasons why people do that. I personally like having everything together because it makes us trust one another. Mm-hmm. And I think that trust is so vital between spouses.
I think that is a hot topic, actually. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in the comments that are going to argue towards keeping separate bank accounts. Mm-hmm. But for my wife and myself as well, from day one, she had a job when we got married. Day one, we started combined income. Mm-hmm. Like, we're in it. Like, we're together in this, right? And we need to learn how to build something together and how to trust each other and to make decisions together. And I feel like that has always strengthened our marriage. It's been a strong point of our marriage. It's never been a hard conversation, or it's never been an awkward conversation to have with my spouse. And I feel like that's important in building trust with the spouse. So
there's boundaries that you want to have with it. I think that's important, having boundaries. It's not like if you want to go go out to dinner, do you have to ask your spouse to go out to dinner? Probably, maybe not. But if you're going to go buy a $1,000 purchase for whatever it is, maybe that's a good thing to have that conversation. And I think what it does as well is when you have someone who's accountable to that same account, then you're making decisions that are probably wiser. Because it's like, do I really want to go buy that if my wife and I have committed to discuss purchases over a certain amount? Mm-hmm. Do I really want to go have that conversation with her? Probably not,
Well, I think so many times you're going to get two different backgrounds that get married, and they start doing they have two different goals with money, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I've seen you get the saver and then you have the spender, which is a lot of times how the spouse relationship goes. You have the saver, you have the spender. And then sometimes you have the super saver, which is ridiculously tight. And then you have the super spender, which just is uncontrollable, right? Yeah. And I could see how that could be a conflict if a husband and wife are not on the same page. I think most important conversation to have is to get on the same page with your financial goals. Yeah. Break down your I don't like to use the word budget, but break down your expenses and say, look, this is how much our bills are. This is how much our income is. This is how much our bills are. This is how much we need to put away for savings and investing in the future. And the rest, we can spend. But we're on the same goals. We have the same mindset behind how much we're saving and how much we're putting away. I feel like you just have to learn how to come to this happy medium. And until you increase your income enough, or you have enough cash flowing assets where you don't even have to have that conversation anymore, right? And that's ultimately the goal, is getting to a point in your life and your marriage. It might take 10 years. It might take 15 years to get to that point where you can literally spend without having a conversation. Yeah. You don't have to anymore.
I think there's some truth to that, and very important to be on the same page with whoever you're sharing that account with. Absolutely.
Yep. And so after you establish this with husband and wife, figuring out what your financial goals are together, right? And having one bank account, how have you gone and grown to multiple bank accounts and why?
Well, it started out with just a normal checking account, and I think the probably the biggest tip I would give is create good habits with your money. Create great habits with your money. The best habits I think that you can create that I have lived to since I was probably, I don't know, 10 years old. My dad taught me this, but it's a 10-20-20 rule. 10% always goes back. Goes back to your community, goes back to your church, whatever it is. 20% is going to go into a savings account. It's an emergency fund, and you just don't touch it. Once it builds up to a certain amount, then you continue to put in 20%, and that can go into investments and things to create wealth.
Yeah.
The other 20%, if you're an entrepreneur, you own a business, I save 20% for taxes. The most basic thing I think, if I could give a tip to anybody, it would be have 3 bank accounts, separate bank accounts for all of those with no debit cards.
Okay.
You have the account that all the money flows into. You open up another account, and that goes to your giving back account. You open up another one that goes to your savings. You open another one that goes to your taxes. As entrepreneurs, you pay quarterly taxes. And once you've done that and you've set that up, every time you get a deposit, you immediately put in the percentage that you need to in each account. Is my wife and I, as we've done this, I've had a deposit for $7, and I make sure to put from that $7 into those accounts. And I've had deposits for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we make sure to put it in those accounts. And it doesn't matter how big or small those deposits are. It's creating a habit and creating a system that it works for you. And that's a very basic, simple one that you can do if you're just starting out. But creating that habit is crucial.
As you grow more assets that have their own LLCs, is that how you've grown and expanded this to 21 different bank accounts?
Yes. Yeah, that is definitely part of it. The way we have ours structured is we have all income flowing into one account.
Okay.
And then from there, we can distribute where we need to. And I say all income when it comes to my wife and I's income.
Yeah.
We have separate accounts for real estate that we have a certain amount of real estate in one account. I don't know. I don't like to go too much liability in one account.
Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with losing, I guess.
Yeah.
If you get sued and that kind of thing, and you might not have your business entity set up properly, if you lose all of that and everything's in one account, that could be scary. So we have multiple accounts for real estate up to a certain amount as well. Okay. So there's a lot of them that you can do, but
so you're spreading your money out amongst different accounts to just kind of minimize your liability per account. If somebody sued you or something happened, they went after that one bank account that's affiliated with that LLC.
That's all they get.
They can only handle that one bank account, right?
As long as your entities are set up properly, yes.
Okay, I like that. And then let's talk about investments, going into different investments and doing that with your spouse, right? That can be a scary thing. Sorry, my phone is blowing up. And
we must be on this exact same group.
It's on Do Not Disturb too.
Mine too.
Crazy. But doing an investment with your spouse, okay? My wife, and everybody's going to be a little different. My wife, I think after the first one, she trusted my judgment and understood that I'm going to do my due diligence before I do an investment. But I always talk to my spouse about my investment. I say, hey, by the way, I'm buying this house in Indianapolis. By the way, 1031 and exchange the money out of this property. I'm going to sell this property. I'm going to roll it over to an apartment complex in Pennsylvania. Like, she doesn't know the details. She doesn't understand why. I just give her kind of the basics, and she trusts me that I've done the due diligence to do this and supports it. What has been your process with your wife with investments? And because it's a combined bank account, it's combined money, like what has been your process with your wife in investing?
It's a little different. I've done a lot of due diligence, like you mentioned that you've done as well. So in an area where I understand things, there's a lot more trust that my wife would rely on me. And then in an area where my wife understands things, because she also invests her money in opportunities, I have to lean on her for that. One of the things that I've really appreciated with our relationship in that is it's never, hey, I'm doing this, I just want to let you know about it. Mm-hmm. It's, this is an opportunity. What do you think? And as I've done that, it's helped me go and lay out all the pros and the potential cons to this, and have her take a look and see, hey, is this a good one? Because honestly, she's a much better decision maker than I am.
Yeah.
But she is. She holds me to a line that I would never, that the right line that has probably saved my butt a handful of times. And I think I just love involving her in those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I agree. And, my wife likes to play devil's advocate a lot. And then sometimes it's good to have a second set of eyes that has the same goals and intentions as you do, right? Not an outsider coming in saying you should invest in this and trying to sell you on an investment opportunity, but taking it to your spouse and say, what do you think? Like, here's the opportunity. How do you feel about it? And, you build up that trust with your spouse. And I feel like that's very healthy for relationships, right?
The other thing is that what happens if it goes bad? The weight is on you, but it's on both of you.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when it goes good, you both get to embrace the good, right? And so I think it's important to involve, to whatever extent you feel is right, but I think it's important to involve your spouse on those things.
And then let's go back to one more subject. I think just basic finance 101, debit cards versus credit cards, right? We have a couple credit cards, different companies. We have obviously our debit cards to every one of our bank accounts. We only use credit cards. We don't use debit cards in our home. And that concept was weird for my wife to understand why we use credit cards for everything. And obviously the way I look at it and the way I've always understood credit cards is whether your wife is spending money at Nordstrom's or she's buying something, these companies, these businesses understand that, and they actually price into everything that they sell credit cards fees, merchant fees, right? Because they have to pay credit card fees to American Express.
Also do we in all of our
exactly.
in all real estate deals that we do, yeah.
So those are already priced into the cost of those jeans and already priced into the cost of that sweater and whatever you're buying, that purse you're buying. They've already planned on some of this is going to go to the merchant. Like I have to pay my American Express fees. I have to pay my Visa fees and MasterCard fees. So if they're pricing that into the sweater and you're buying it with a debit card, you are paying for merchant fees, whether you are utilizing these credit cards or not. Like you're still going to pay for them. So the way I look at it as one perspective is you might as well use an American Express and get the points and get the cash back offer or get the upgrade on travel or get the benefits of protection from your purchases. There's so many benefits of an American Express and having the protections or building up your credit or, just some other ones, getting the travel, getting the upgrades on the hotel rooms, all that kind of stuff. Those are added benefits that you're getting for free, but really you're paying for them whether you use a credit card or not.
I love that perspective because I honestly, I've never looked at it like that. The only problem with this is that you have people who have a hard time understanding, okay, this is what's in my bank account. This is what I can spend. This is my credit limit is here.
Yeah.
Does my bank account can afford to pay off whatever I'm doing, right? That's the biggest problem that that I think most people will have is they will over leverage themselves on a credit card.
Yep.
And then they're really in trouble. So when it comes to building credit, that's a phenomenal way to build credit is through a credit card. What's your advice on building credit through a credit card, but then also making sure you're not over leveraging and putting yourself in a bad position?
Funny story. I learned this my freshman year in college because my parents, here's another tip. My parents actually put me on their American Express when I turned 13 years old. So American Express doesn't allow you to add a user until they're 13 years old on it. Once I turned 13, my parents added me to their credit card. So I started building credit history, right? So when I get to college, they opened up a college credit card for me, in which I qualified for because I already had some credit. And it was a small credit limit. It was like $2,000 or something like that. So I have my own credit card now. And my dad's like entrusted me, here's a credit card that you can use, right? And I go in and I remember I didn't have $2,000 in the bank, but I had a $2,000 credit card.
Yeah.
And I moved into my new room and my new apartment with my buddies, and we needed a TV. And so I had a job. I was working in a call center, and I went and I bought a TV on my credit card. And I told my dad about it. I was like, hey, I just spent $800 on this credit card. And my dad taught me right then.
That's a nice TV 20 years ago.
It was huge. It was so big. It was one of those one on the ground that stands this tall.
Oh, dude.
But my dad asked me if I had the money in the bank account to pay off that credit card right away. And I said, no, I don't, but I can make payments on it. It's only $54 a month, Dad, like whatever, right? And he taught me a lesson right there. If you don't have the money in the bank account, don't spend it on their credit card. Like, you're supposed to pay off that credit card immediately, right? Before you inquire that interest, because you're going to be paying 22% interest on that credit card, right? On that expense. And that's where people get in trouble, is they do spend the money before they have it. And that can get you in, that credit card deficit. And it is almost impossible to get out of that when you're paying a 22% interest rate, right? And so
when you're young like that, that was probably a lesson that you will forever cherish. Obviously, if you remember it for that long ago, right? It's probably shaped how you do things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're young, and let's say your parents haven't put you on their account and you don't have any credit established at all, tell us the fastest way to establish credit with a credit card.
Yeah, you can actually go to a bank and you can get a backed credit card. So you can get, can't remember the exact term, but it's a cashback credit card. So if you put $500 in the bank, they'll actually give you a credit card worth $500. So your credit card limit is backed by the cash that you actually have in the bank. And it's like a line of credit, but it's active with a credit card. And so you can go in and you can get one of those types of credit cards that's supported with cash back that you have in the bank account. It's a great way to start. Another way that you can get started, you can go and get basic utility services, just start getting little stuff in your name that can start establishing credit, because it's so important to start building up credit.
Okay.
And start showing a bank that you will make your payments on time. And then eventually you can go get that. If you're a student as well, they give student line of credits or student credit cards, which you can go get and be a responsible user of that credit card, so you can start building and establishing credit.
I love it. In our line of work, we work with 18, I would say, what's the average age? 18 to probably 20, 25, right around there. And as we've traveled to our sales teams and spent time with them, we've realized that a lot of these youngsters don't quite understand all this. And so those are two awesome ways to help develop credit with the credit card. One more I want to add to that is, when you're using your credit card, they have what's called they use a term, credit utilization.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to keep basically 30%. You don't ever want to spend more than 30% of your credit limit. So if I have, for easy numbers, I'm new to this thing, and I have $1,000 limit to my credit and that I can spend every month, I never want to spend more than $300, or if I do spend $300, I want to pull the money from my bank account, pay it off, and then I can spend more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But only use your credit card. Just never let it exceed 30% of your credit limit.
Yep.
By doing that, your credit will help build. So that's 3 ways to help build credit. I love those first 2 ways as well.
Yeah, and on that note too, is you can increase that line of credit every 6 months. So if you're showing that you're a responsible user of your credit amount, you have $1,000, every 6 months you can click on the app or go in and request an increase in that line of credit. And usually it's by 60%. So you can go from 1,000 to 1,600, and then keep going. Every 6 months you can ask for an increase, to where I've built up my credit that I have available on credit cards to over $500,000. So right now I have $500,000 in an available credit. Some of that's business credit, some of that's personal credit that I can go and get, because I keep requesting increases to my line of credit to just have. As an entrepreneur, it's important, if you're in sales, you're in commission or anything like that, it's important to always just have extra cash available, just for a rainy day or for whatever it is as you're going through and growing your own book of business. And so I love to have those lines of credit and those kind of things there and available for if I ever need them or anything like that.
So while we were talking about this, we had a little break, and one of our camera gals asked I thought it was an awesome question, because when it comes to your spouse and sharing bank accounts, but she asked, how important is it that your spouse has this an equal level of financial literacy as you, if you are going to share bank accounts? What's your opinion on that?
There's no way. Like, I feel like it's my role and responsibility to listen to every book, every podcast that I can, to take on the burden of financial literacy. Like, I feel like that's my role in our household. I don't expect my wife to read every book on finance and investing and that kind of stuff, but I'm going to share what I learned from these books or from these podcasts or from these seminars with her, and we're going to have productive conversations about this. I remember early in our marriage, we used to have Sunday kind of finance meetings. Like we didn't love talking about money all the time, but as I was learning things and as I was, trying new things or, whatever, we would meet on Sundays and we would talk about finances. And a lot of times that was me educating her on, hey, we just got a new credit card. Here's some rules about credit cards. Like we can't overspend 30% on our credit card, or, let's put all of these business expenses. If we feel like it's a business expense, let's put it on our business credit card so we can deduct this at the end of the year. If it's personal, like groceries and this kind of stuff, we'll just put it on this MasterCard where we get cash back on that, right? And it's a personal credit card. It's not a business card.
I like that. I love, initially when I thought about that question, I was like, well, yeah, of course it's smart that you're both, but let's call a spade. We have to split up the roles as a couple, right? And it could be me that has that financial literacy. It could be my wife who has that
some
financial
households
literacy.
It is the wife.
It might be either. Yeah, well, I think a lot of them it is, right? I think one of them needs to have that burden, and maybe not burden, but that one of them needs to be that responsibility. You got to have one person that will, but the other one also has to either be okay with that or level up their financial literacy as well, right? So I think it's such a great question, but one person does need to make sure that they are very financial literate. And if you're both not financial literate, then you listen to some podcasts, read some books. Psychology of Money is an awesome book, but there's a lot of resources out there, and spend the time to be financial literate. Yeah.
Robert Kiyosaki said, well, when with this, he's the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he's written a ton of financial books that I love. He said, financial literacy. So if you're financially illiterate, that problem has come from our education system, our school system, and it's done by design. They don't teach finance in school for a reason, right? And it can be cured, or it can be resolved through the education system as well. And if it's not happening in a school system, it has to happen in our homes. The education in our homes needs to happen to solve this problem with people being financially illiterate, right?
Yeah.
And why we're in this credit, over $1 trillion worth of credit is spent on credit cards right now. We're in the highest debt that we've ever been in America. It's because people don't understand these basic principles of credit cards versus debit cards, and when to spend money and how to spend money, and how to budget and this kind of stuff. And so we need to have one spouse dedicated to this education. And in our household, it's me, and I share these tidbits with my wife. Hey, I just learned this and I like this. We're going to try this.
Sometimes my wife's like, okay, we'll roll her eyes sometimes. It's like, okay, I've heard enough money talk for today, but
they get it.
Yeah.
And we talk about it. And so, I think that was a great question. Thanks for sharing. And if you want some more questions like this, ask the questions in the comments. We'll answer them. We'll get to them.
We'll get into more money talk later, maybe a little more in depth, but that was an awesome basic financial.
Like and follow for more.